Hello and welcome to Scary Story Podcast. The following stories deal with strange events inside the home. If you've ever felt afraid of being in your own house, you might have some investigating to do. My name is Edwin, and here is a scary story. House for rent. I got a phone call to go visit a place as soon as possible. The high season of apartment rentals had started and the race was on to catch the hottest places and rent them out. And my manager was on her game that year. She got a whole group of college kids going door to door getting phone numbers of potential rentals, and two of us who would go and make the listings. My job was to take photos and videos of the places and list them on every platform out there, even Airbnb. It was odd for my boss to call me to grab photos of a place outside of business hours, but she insisted that this was a big deal. The house was going to be listed way below its value, which meant that this would be a quick sale. I put my food away for later and grabbed my camera bag and keys and went for the door. I didn't mind doing this type of work, but I knew that a night shot would be a tough one, so I hoped that I would get some good shots of the interior and prayed that it would be furnished. My boss said that it was staged and ready for photo work according to the sons of the owners, but she had been known to be wrong every once in a while. Hopefully her good luck streak this year would continue. I pulled up to the house to find all of the lights off. The fence in the front had been lined with rope, and the front yard was overgrown. My phone vibrated in my pocket, just when I was about to call my boss. That's when she texted me. "The keys are by the mailbox," it said. I looked under the mailbox and found a nail with two keys neatly hanging from the wooden post. Once I was at the door, the sensors went off and the entire interior of the home lit up, even the lamps. This was a big place, and the price definitely did not match the house. If everything they said was correct, this place would be rented out immediately. I stepped inside and set up my tripod and plugged in some more lights by the kitchen. I turned on the faucet, the stovetops, the fans, everything, and went to work. I didn't even think about the shots that much anymore. I figured the next team would be arriving to take photos pretty soon, so this was a game of speed. I went to the first living room, took my shots, and took a backup set of photos, and moved on. This went on for about an hour, going through the 2 living rooms, the family room, the exterior fireplace area, the 5 bedrooms. But there was one place that was locked. It looked like the master bedroom. I mean, technically every bedroom in there looked like a master bedroom to me, spacious and with beautiful decorations. But this one had a larger doorframe. If I was correct on my assumption, there would be no way that I could skip the room. The second key. I pulled the keys out of my pocket and tried it, and it didn't open. I tried the second one, and like butter, it turned almost by itself and opened inward, revealing one of the largest rooms in the entire house. It wasn't a master bedroom. It looked like an entire suite all by itself, along with a conference table. Once I had an idea of the size of the room, I switched up my lenses and went to work. I got a shot of the meeting area, the couches, the bed, and the bathroom. I also made sure to get a shot of the enormous walk-in closet. I pulled up my computer on the conference table and backed up the shots, briefly scanning through them to make sure that I got everything. I'd be back for the exterior photos tomorrow morning. This place was amazing. The last photo review was what changed my mind, though. If you see them for yourself, you'll notice a set of shadows in just about every other photo. It's subtle, I'll give you that, but they're there. Even the interns that my boss had hired had a tough time believing that I hadn't edited the photos myself in order to prank them or something. But I had no reason to, and the photos needed to get online preferably that next day. There was no time to waste. The intern who helped me with the edits tried her best to crop out the photos, but there was one that made it online, and that was the beginning of a series of problems that we had with the sons of the owners. But it wasn't only the shadows, those that looked like silhouettes. It was the stains of the white walls of the walk-in closet. Fingers, I think. Blood stains on the wall that neither of us noticed that caused the problems. The listing was flagged by the services we were using, and the owners tried to sue us. It wasn't our fault. There was no way anybody could have seen that coming. Then one day my boss explained to me about that same house and that it had been on the news. During an attempted robbery, a woman and her daughter ran to hide in the walk-in closet, where they were killed. I had been walking around there by myself without a clue. Well, not really by myself. I can't ignore the shadows. My boss has one of those photos in her office now. She didn't mind missing out on that specific house. It still hasn't had a long-term tenant. This next story is called Taps, and it's coming up right after this. When we first moved into the home, we were so excited that we skipped doing what normal homebuyers should do. Things like checking out the schools, for example. Though that would be one of the least important things now that I think about it. Once we closed on the deal, we moved in right away and started decorating the place, trying to make it our own finally. It was tough for us to accept at the time that this place would never be completely our own. It started with simple things, like when your house settles. Random tabs here and there. It was just like that. I stayed up late at night sometimes to talk with some of my clients that I have overseas, so phone calls at 1 or 2 in the morning were common. And honestly, they didn't bother me too much. What made me feel uneasy was that walk from my empty home office to the bathroom, and then again from the bathroom to the bedroom. The first couple of times I bumped into the table I had set up in the hallway, though it was tiny. But there was no window on it like at our old place. It was so dark that I wouldn't know if I was going straight down the hallway or toward the stairs without lifting my arms away from my body to feel the cold wall with the back of my hands. And such was the case on a Tuesday night. My phone had died completely with my charger being upstairs. I decided to call it a night early. I was alone at the house this time, coincidentally, I suppose. Lots of little factors played a role in one of the strangest nights of my life. I'll try to tell you every detail of what happened that night, and hopefully you can agree with me. I had just gotten off a video call when I picked up my cell phone from the desk. I barely got a glimpse of the 2% battery life it was claiming to have, sometimes just enough to get the flashlight to work for me as I walked down the hall and toward the staircase. But not this time. "We need to do something about that," was the phrase we shared around our new house whenever we found a new quirk. Something we had overlooked and should have checked before signing the papers. One of those things was the odd placement of the light switches. This one, for example. That would make you turn off the light right at the start of the hallway instead of having the double switches. Do you know what I'm talking about? One at the end of the hall and one at the start of it so that you can turn it on when you start walking through it and off once you leave it. Well, this house didn't have that. I guess I could leave the hallway light on the whole night, just like I have been tempted to do so for the past few years that I lived here. But for some reason, it seemed too wasteful. I only started doing that recently. With my only source of light completely dead, I turned off the computer screen. Big mistake. The place was so dark without it that I should have first turned on the lights of the office space and then turned off my screen. My office had a window, and it was the first time that the place looked so dark. Like I said, many things played a role here. This was one of them. So I stretched my hands outward, feeling for the edge of the desk, grabbing onto the chair where a slow but steady mountain of jackets and papers was beginning to grow. Then I accidentally kicked the corner of a cardboard box stuffed with my old heavy books. I made a mental note to wear shoes when I walked around in the dark. I got to the light switch, flicked it on, and opened the door out toward the hall. I wrapped my arm around the edge of the wall to reach for the switch when I felt it for the first time. It was cold and scaly, like the texture of a lizard, or at least how I would imagine it to be. But in the same manner, it scurried off with light taps down the wall and onto the floor. Of course, I gasped as my heart started speeding up. I tried not to scream. Were lizards common to this area? There was no way of knowing. I didn't even know my address for the first month I was there. But I had to look, so I peeked out of the office and down the hall. When I saw a tiny, puddle-looking shadow, dark, like a hole on the floor, moving toward the stairs. I reached for the light switch for the hallway and flicked it on. Then it spread out like a puff of smoke and disappeared. It's odd, the feeling that you get when you witness something like that. But it seems to happen every single time something strange happened at the house. First, you feel fear, maybe numbness. But doubt creeps in faster than I'd be okay with admitting. When my friend and I got followed when we were leaving the mall one night, I kept telling her that maybe the man needed directions or help with something. If it hadn't been for her rushing us to the security office booth, who knows what would have happened to us. And the same thing happened with me now. I told myself that it was late, that there was nothing to worry about. It was just my imagination. That I had seen similar things to this one in the past and it was never that important. That I read too many books. That I watched too many movies. That it didn't make any sense. So I took a deep breath and to prove it to myself, I would go down the hallway without the lights on. Saying it to myself now makes it seem very dumb, I know. But at the same time, it was liberating. It wouldn't take long for me to regret it, however. I got a last look at the hallway to memorize where the table was and how many steps it would take me to get to the staircase. I took another deep breath and turned off the light. My first step was when I felt the numbing feeling once again, and yet I kept going. The second step was easier as I tapped along the floor, my socks trying to feel for the edge of it. It was supposed to be a little brighter upstairs, with the light post from the outside shining in through the window in the landing upstairs. Just 2 more steps and the stream of light would be visible. I could kind of see the blue light from the outside bouncing off the bend of the stairs. And I took them. It was 3 steps in total before I saw the light, and total and complete darkness behind me now. I tried not to look, but I couldn't help myself as my head turned to the right to follow a light tapping and the urging sensation to turn around. Then, in my right ear, I heard it. Hello. Blood left my head, replaced by the cold rush of wind inside me that I feel whenever I feel scared. I tried to take a step forward, but I felt a cold grip of a hand around my ankle. It slipped off as I kicked at it, trying desperately to skip every other step. As I rushed up toward the bedroom, I ran as fast as I could, locked the bedroom door, and pressed the button on my phone. I turned on the light and spotted the white charger on the nightstand. I plugged the phone in. John and I talked about it, and I had already calmed down by this point. Nothing left to do except think about the situation later with a clear mind the next day. Now all I've heard is light taps on some nights, usually the darkest ones. John says it was its way of welcoming me. Scary Story Podcast is produced by me, Edwin Covarrubias. You can stay up to date with the show by tapping follow on your podcast player and signing up for updates over on scarystorypodcast.com. The show is also on Patreon, where new ad-free episodes are being released that will let you listen without interruptions, all while supporting the show. The same is coming to Apple Podcasts. Until next time, thank you very much for listening.